name is Laura Woodman. I am the communication specialist at Ivey Publishing, and I am so happy to welcome all of you to this first webinar and panel of our recently launched Ivey Publishing Sustainability Case Writing Awards in collaboration with our friends from the Principles for Responsible Management Education, which is an initiative of the United Nations Global Impact, which I'm sure you know. We are really thrilled to have you all here because as you all share a passion for teaching sustainability through case-based learning, and especially for bridging that gap between theory and practice. For us, these awards are the result of months of planning and lots of execution to bring you the opportunity to create cases that are aligned to our purpose of educating future business leaders on sustainability issues by providing them the tools they need and the knowledge they need to drive meaningful change. So, thrilled again. We are close to 150 participants, which is exciting. And now I would like to present to you our moderator. We have the privilege to have Tima Bansal moderate this panel. And for those who don't know her yet, Tima is a professor of sustainability and strategy at the Ivey Business School. And she's also the current chair of the board of the United Nations Principles for Responsible Management Education Prime, as I just said, our partners in this case writing awards. Tina also leads Innovation North, which is reimagining business education to create better businesses and more resilient, prosperous, and sustainable societies. And Tima here at Ivey founded the Network for Business Sustainability at the Center for Building Sustainable Value. Tima has a marvelous resume, and she holds honorary doctorates from the University of Hamburg, University of Montreal here in Canada, and the University of Amsterdam. And she's the first Canadian to be named a faculty pioneer for academic leadership by the Aspen Institute, headquartered in Washington, D.C. So it is my pleasure, and please join me in welcoming Tima Bansal.
Thank you, Laura. In fact, the pleasure is mine. This is really an honor to be able to moderate this amazing panel of incredible teachers. I'm going to introduce the panel, and so they'll probably be spotlighted soon. We have three panelists that represent different parts of the world. Aurora Diaz Solag. You can have to say it for me. Sorry.
It's okay, don't worry. Thank you.
How do you say your surname?
Soloaga, Diaz Soloaga, yeah. But you can say yes, Diaz, yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Aurora is a senior lecturer at the School of Management Alma-U in Almaty, Kazakhstan. She teaches leadership and corporate social responsibility, global management. In 2022, she was named the Seaman Teacher of the Year. She's an active member of the expert pedagogy group of the Impactful I-5 program at Prime. It's a flagship project of the platform. And then Rob Klassen, who is a colleague of mine, a longstanding colleague of mine, and he's also a professor at the Ivey Business School, a professor of operations management and sustainability, also the associate dean of research. His research interests focus on exploring the linkages between operations and sustainability, with a particular focus on supply chain management. If you don't know him, you will know him through the supply chain management research area. In addition to teaching the first-year operations management course in the MBA and MBA programs, he's also introduced, more recently, the Managing for Sustainable Development course. He continues to actively develop new teaching materials, including 20 cases and exercises. That's amazing. In the area of operations, strategy, process analysis, quality management, and environmental management. I've known Sebastius for decades now, and he's in India. He is an amazing storyteller, so you get a chance to get to hear him directly. He's a professor of marketing at the think we might have the old school here. We have Xavier School of Management. You've moved since then, Sebastius. And you're muted.
It's called XLRI, Xavier School of Management, very similar to the one I was earlier. Yeah.
Got it. 3 decades of corporate and academic experience. He's taught, spoken on marketing and sustainability issues in 26 countries at leading universities, including Harvard, Yale, Cornell, INSEAD, Tsinghua, and the University of Queensland and University College London. It's such an impressive group of panelists. I want you to start by asking a set of questions to each of them. And in about 40 minutes or so, we would welcome questions from the audience as well. So do add them to your Q&A. But it's sustainability, so we got to start very quickly with what does sustainability mean to you, because its possibilities are so broad. So Aurora, do you want to start?
Sure, thank you. Well, I would say that sustainability is much more than just a couple of or a series of acts of behaviors. I would prefer to think that is a mindset, a way of life. And I repeat, much more than just an agenda or something that must be achieved because that's necessity of this world, but also, as I say, a way of thinking. And I like a lot the word responsibility, because I believe that, well, not because it's included in the prime title, Principles for Responsible Management Education, but because it's something personal that must be achieved with your daily decisions, actions, and only that way can be promoted and can be achieved as a community, as a society. Thank you.
Love it. What about you, Rob? What does sustainability mean to you?
For me, I think sustainability is actually a bit of a moving target. It's the sort of thing where, at least often when you say sustainability, people have a particular image, but we don't all have the same image of what it could be. And so I think in that sense, one has to recognize that the definition changes as technology changes, as our understanding of human systems change, as we think about equity and fairness and so on. And so it really, for me, I often start with the triple bottom line as kind of a view of how we can translate it into management education, where we think about it from an environmental, social, and economic perspective. Might be a bit old school, I understand, but in terms of thinking about how we talk to students, it does help structure some of the challenges that we face when we talk about different companies and different aspects of management education. But because we're focusing on case teaching too, we'll say that often when we think about sustainability, it does need to be translated to a very tactical sense for different industries. And so what one sees in the apparel industry and the supply chains, serving the apparel industry, the way one would define sustainability is probably much more focused on the human interactions, human work standards, and so on. Versus if you're in the auto industry, where it's not about as much about the supply chain, it's actually about the product. It's about some of the fundamental design elements that go into what we consider transportation. So it does vary. I think we have to recognize the richness, the complexity, the challenges of doing that. But that's also what makes it extremely interesting for us as educators.
Sebastius.
Yeah, so first of all, thank you, PRME and Ivey, for this invitation. It's really an honor to be here with such colleagues. It's a question that really made me think, Tima. And I think for me, it looks like a pizza. At the base, you have consciousness and love, but on the top, you have food, healthcare, clean air and water for everybody in the world. I mean, that's my very personal way of understanding sustainability coming from a developing country. But as a business management educator, as well as an executive earlier, I sort of resonate with what Rob said of it being a moving target. As of today, as of now, I think sustainability in business is about being authentic and sensitive.
Wow. I have to say that just reflecting on the three of you, that Aurora, you saying it's really about responsibility and how you make your personal decisions and personal actions. Rob, you saying that it's almost everything. It's at a macro level, and it's very contextually based, though, and eventually it's about the environment, social. And Sebastian, your pizza analogy is fabulous. Consciousness and love being the toppings, but you have to make sure you have a good base. Those basic needs, as you said, those are fabulous. And case-based teaching is particularly suited, I think, to teaching sustainability. But I'd love to hear from your own perspective why you think that's the case. Can we start with you, Sebastian, as to
Sure.
what is it that makes cases so relevant to sustainability?
So I will just maybe go back to my first date with case teaching. Was through Professor Kamran Kashani of IMD. And I still remember his session almost 20 years back, teaching us, a group of faculty, a case on Deutsche Telekom for 3 hours. And I was completely swept off. And I said, if I have to be teaching, I would always use cases. So since then, of course, a lot of things have changed, including the teachers and the students and the context. But cases, for me, teaching around the world and across disciplines, have meant the ability to choose context. A student in Peru and a student in Africa and a student in Ontario come from a very, very different background. And if I tell them that ecosystem services needs to be paid for, I think, they will interpret it in very different ways. So this ability to choose context for me gives me a lot of optimism when I walk into the class. And, I was thinking about this question when you asked it. It works very well with a 19-year-old undergraduate student, completely immersed in her Instagram and Twitter, maybe never inside the office, but the case as a story immediately connects her to the context. And the versatility of case teaching here is we can also take it for the executives, who have really been there, done that, and they just seem to tell us without really spelling it out. Don't give us theory, tell me how to get it done. So considering all this, I remember a case that I co-wrote with Utima called Creating Value from Waste, Lessons from Mahindra and Mahindra by Ivey. And when I taught this case last year to a group of senior executives, everybody could sort of immediately jump in from where they were, different industries. But if you take other case, I have not written many cases, but another case with Ivey is a case we did on reusable sanitary pads for rural women in developing countries, where there is a big issue of menstrual health and hygiene. And when I use this case in my sales and distribution course, with one case, you could connect sustainability, marketing, and, the context of the developing economy. So I think all this together, for me, makes case a go-to choice when I am thinking about or teaching sustainability.
I love the answer that you've given, and I must say it's brave to talk about menstrual cycles in an Indian context. Like that really puts it raises
actually Tima, it actually allows us to bring the topic in the classroom without going away from the curriculum. So that's the other power of the case. You can choose these contexts and sensitize students.
Love it. Rob, so tell me, why are cases so suitable for sustainability teaching?
Well, like you and our other panelists, I've taught with cases for many years, and I think in part, the multiple audiences that we were just hearing about, whether it's executives or students, is certainly a key point. To me, it's also about multiple levels of analysis. Most cases, or at least well-written cases, let me just put my stake in the ground there, sort carry both strategic aspects, but they also carry tactical aspects. And it allows the faculty member, the instructor, to turn around and say, am I going to focus, given the audience, more on the strategic aspects? I just maybe spend a bit of time on the more tactical elements, maybe not a great deal, but with the same case, different audience, different stakeholder group, you may very well turn it around and say, no, I'm going to focus much more on the tactical elements in this case. The students just aren't ready to think through the strategic aspects, and the way they can engage at this point in their learning journey is in this way. And so I think that's that flexibility that allows you to consider multiple levels of analysis that's really important. And in fact, even within a class, often learners are at very different stages in their understanding of the topic. And so again, they're able to engage at the level they're most comfortable, but then get pushed, get extended, start to see new insights at other levels. And so I think it's the richness, both from an instructor perspective and from a student perspective, that allows cases to really maximize the amount of learning that can occur in a fairly short period of time.
Yeah, and pulling the two ideas together, it's about this way of telling a story, so it's super engaging, but that applies to so many different people that come from different backgrounds and contexts, but then always extends, that people relate to it, but always extends or pushes their thinking a little bit further. I want to give you a different question, Aurora, if you don't mind. You're with the Ivey project, and of course that means something to both of us, but does it mean something to everybody in the audience? And so can you tell us a little bit more about the Ivey project and why cases are particularly relevant?
Of course. Thank you, Tina. Well, as you just introduced, probably not everybody have heard that closely to what the Ivey represents. And that's why I decided to prepare some super brief slides. If you don't mind, I'm going to start sharing, because I thought that probably will be much easier if I just can focus on what is this about? Because all of you already heard about this collaboration between Ivey and Prime, but perhaps you don't know why we call it, as you mentioned in the introduction, the flagship of this amazing platform, which is Prime. Yes, because, the reality is that this collaboration of a lot of different business schools and universities of all around the world decided to focus precisely on the importance of the pedagogy. Why cases, why other approaches to pedagogy that really could make sustainability something much more meaningful for our students, something that really could change their experience. Well, precisely, more or less, as you can see here, because of this very brief story. Because, with the support of the LEGO Foundation, as you can see here at the beginning of this, the number one step, with research based on all the experience of the LEGO Foundation, in Prime we decided to check in the context of business schools worldwide how the 5 principles that I'm going to show you right now, and that could be called the impactful 5, because they can really make an impactful, can be applied not only with the previous experience of LEGO with children, but also with adults and with the students of business schools. So during 2 years already, almost 2 years and a half, because we started in April 2022, we started applying those principles in the reality, in the context of business schools, with different activities that precisely pretended to apply these 5 characteristics, and in some way piloting, experimenting, and learning with from each other and with each other about how this can be applied at the business schools. And very briefly, as I told you, the 5. And the number 5 precisely comes from here. The 5 characteristics that we were trying to demonstrate and to check out that make the learning process something effective and something that really transform our learners, our students into the future responsible leaders of tomorrow are precisely the ones that you can see in front of you. The first one could be the blue one, make learning meaningful. The second, foster joy and well-being. The third, develop supportive social interaction. Also facilitate active engagement. And finally, design for iteration, right? So our work, as also was mentioned at the beginning, we worked together 18 experts from all around the world, from each of the regional chapters of PRIME. We worked together to, I repeat, to just check with different activities how if we put all together these 5 factors, this can really transform the experience of the students. And probably this will be the last slide to show you. Just to explain that these 5 elements can also be translated, can be transformed and put into practice with the help of different movements. So the small names that you see at the right side of the slide with the same color of the principles. For instance, if we spoke about social developing supportive social interaction, how we can do this a reality in our classes? Well, by communifying, braving, briding, and teaming. Well, this is super brief, but just as a couple of ideas to show you that with this framework, we work together, and not only with cases, but many times with them, we experimented the potential of perhaps not a new pedagogy, because each of the elements probably you can say, well, that's something that resonates a lot with me. But the magic of putting all of them together and to applying them to the reality of different cultural contexts and different schools all around the world enriched a lot of experience. And yes, probably I can explain a little bit later that we also created a playbook, which is online, translated into many different languages, and is available for everyone that would like to dive into this and to learn a little bit more about this. Perhaps.
What I love about what you've said, Aurora, is that it's a community. And so we get to share good practices. How can people learn more about the community or joining this?
Sure. Yes. So it's quite easy, and I can show you once again, because I didn't want to stall the complete show, but you can learn more in the scanning.
Fabulous. Yes.
Yes, scanning this QR, you will have access to the playbook, which is in many different languages, in English, French, Spanish, English, Indian, Russian, Arab, and even a couple more. And also you can just check the site of PRIME, of I5, which is, as you can see, here, i5.unprime.org. And also, even if you found it in YouTube, there's a lot of small videos that can present you in very short briefs what is this about. But I would recommend you to take a look at the webpage, because you can find resources, but also events ways by which we are taking the assessment, and many other resources to learn more about this. Yeah.
All right, can you just put the QR code back up?
Sure.
Holly has just asked if.
Yeah.
And so, but I'm just going to move on to my next question. But thanks for that, Aurora.
Sure. Thank you.
I think the beauty of case study teaching is that it allows you to really tell that story. And so we talked about that earlier. And it helps then to take all of those ideas that you're talking about, Aurora, from I5, and to pull them into very specific scenarios. So I would love Rob to be able to just tell us the story of a case study that he really likes teaching and how he teaches it.
Well, thank you very much, team. I appreciate the offer there. One of the cases that I will focus on a case I wrote because, of course, those are the ones we tend to know best. A case I wrote a couple of years ago. It was actually the title of the case is Flash Food. It's a real company based here in Canada, but it's dealing with a topic that I think students are somewhat sensitive to, but don't really understand sometimes the scale of impact or what can be done, and that's food waste. And food waste in particular has enormous ramifications for food insecurity, for climate change, and a variety of other really, really critical issues. And so the case provides a wonderful opportunity to start to introduce some of these challenges and why we see food waste occur in retail grocery stores. And in doing so pushes students to think about, first of all, the whole supply chain, but also more importantly, what can we do better? And so this company offers a better solution. They have partnerships with hundreds of retail grocery outlets across Canada and the US. And the case then moves to a more pragmatic decision to sort of say, okay, as a company, they've had sort of a one-size-fits-all policy working with these retailers in terms of food approaching its expiry date. And the question is, can they do a better job? And how might they do a better job? And what would that mean for both the retailers, for you and I as consumers that are buying these foods at discount and so on? And so it really unpacks a variety of both tensions that occur when we think about making improvements in a more sustainable direction. And it also encourages students to think about their own daily practice when it comes to how they either purchase food or how they try to minimize food waste in their own habits. And so it really does kind of provide that multiple level of discussion, multiple level analysis. But at the core of it, there are decisions that the company and the executives are trying to make to improve their operations as well.
So, Rob, how do you teach it in the classroom? Uh-oh. I think you muted yourself.
Yeah, sorry. Sorry about that. I do actually begin by actually talking about how students think about it. Have any students interacted with this particular web-based platform and availed themselves of the opportunity to buy food at discount and so on? And in doing so, it brings that personal element. And from there, we kind of bridge to the bigger picture about, well, is this company approaching this market? Are there things they're overlooking as they do that? And then in particular, because it involves actions with the grocery outlet as well in terms of training their employees, in terms of handling customers as they come in, how can you best leverage that opportunity to minimize the amount of food waste and maximize the food value, nutritional value that's going out in terms of their operations? So we start from kind of their individual perspective, then we move to kind of the corporate perspective, and then we end on particular policies and decisions that the company has to make.
And at some point, I'm going to come back to this, but I'd love to hear from all three of you just some real pointers about facilitating that classroom conversation so you can get them from going like this to this very specific point that, Rob, you think that such learnings are important. But I'm going to circle around a little bit more. So, Sebastius, what I'd love to hear from you is that you have taught in so many different countries, 26, I think I said at the beginning. What do you think are some of the cross-cultural differences across these? Or are there? That's an assumption I'm making across different continents.
Before I answer that, I loved Rob's response on that, the case and how he teaches. And actually, it reminded me of a case I think you wrote, Tima, possibly on Maple Foods. I don't remember the name of the company, but it had like 6 or 7 parts. So I remember once teaching with that case and at the end asking the students, if a case has got 7 parts, what does it tell you? So one student raised her hand and said, it tells that the challenge never ends. And I said, precisely, that's one of the points I wanted to stress. But so Rob's answer reminded me of that. Yeah, I think it's very challenging and very different to teach sustainability in low-income countries or developing countries or global south. So my experience of teaching in developed countries, I'll just take 2 examples. One is Japan and other is Ireland, is that almost everybody comes to the class with a heightened level of awareness, which possibly because they have a few decades of sustainability conversation in the society. So when we talk about practices, techniques, and standards, it's an automatic fit because they are looking for tools and they are sort of convinced, most of the countries in the global north, about the need for sustainability. But with a few students from Western Europe, I have also seen what I call this, post-sustainability angst. Or, I mean, we have done stuff with, let's say, food waste, but I don't see this really making any change. So, but I don't know whether it's common, but I have seen that coming from a few Western European countries from fairly high-ranked business schools. But when I go and teach in India or Peru or Africa, often I see a macro level skepticism about sustainability. And I was just thinking when you asked this question, so it's some of the answers I hear is, this is colonial stuff. I mean, we have been ruled for decades, and now it's our time to grow. And you're telling that, don't do this. Then there is also a political narrative that comes in often, and I have to struggle to keep that outside the discussion, but it does come in. This saying that national growth imperatives are more important than global sustainability imperatives. So in general, this macro skepticism is there, and there, I think cases really help me in two ways. One is that when I show that a large Brazilian company or a large Indian company is actually benefiting business-wise from sustainability initiatives, it sort of tells them that, yes, you have this at a macro level, these issues, but if you're a manager, you can still look at even short-term gains by adopting sustainability. Although we may differ about the long-term outcomes and the motives. So in that sense, I see a difference, but in some way, climate change has helped me. The natural disasters helps me because, when I show them that a flood in Mumbai and a flood in Germany, causes equal amount of disaster and it's real here and now, often that the political narrative or the developed versus developing narrative gets moved because we can see those disasters happening. So climate change is real. And then we go back to the business case and discuss a case in the classroom.
Yeah, I love how you answer the question too, Sebastian, that you went from saying how it is different in different contexts and how in developing countries of the global south that people really feel it viscerally, the issues personally. And in the West, it can be some skepticism, but then also there's something that you said at the end that pulls us all together because we're all facing these natural disasters. And God forbid, but we are, they've helped us hurt the world, helped us by hurting the world. It's very ironic, but really great answer. Aurora, you're in Kazakhstan. Okay, and I'm in London, Canada. Kazakhstan feels so far away. In fact, I wrote a case study, Chemical in Kazakhstan, many, many years ago, which is a chemical company that had a chemical spill. I would love to, though, know specifically the unique experiences that might be true in Kazakhstan and what we can learn worldwide because we have such an international audience here from your unique experiences.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, thank you for the question. Well, perhaps the first approach that I could share and that some way Subhasis just mentioned is true that teaching in a developing country that for those of you that perhaps cannot even locate it in the map is located in Central Asia. And it has a unique, a very special multicultural context because it's a country in which we can see more than 100 different ethnicities living together and working together in a very peaceful and, for me, very exemplary context. So I think that something that I learned from teaching and working and living in this amazing country is precisely the power of the social interaction and the multicultural approach as a source of peace, tolerance, and diversity. I mean, very naturally in this part of the world, even right now when I say this, I'm located in Spain, but I'm thinking always about Kazakhstan. I think that there is a place in which very naturally you can take advantage of the how easy it is to nurture, to help our students to realize the power that they have to nurture resilience and tolerance and openness, precisely due to that social, very rich cultural context, but also perhaps because of the complex social challenges that just Subhas is also mentioned, for instance, that are living in the region. Because also if you take a closer look to the map, well, we are located in a quite complicated, let's say, political and social context. But still, I believe that learning from best practices and the possibility that cases bring us, as Rob mentioned before, those multiple levels of analysis, and also something that I wanted to highlight, perhaps, is the importance and the advantage in that sense of cases, and also something that precisely because of this introduction that I just explained could be very, very well developed is that virtue that cases present that are able to provoke conversation and discussions among our students, to learn from each other, to better listen to other ideas, other approaches, and then to double context with the reality that happens in that specific case, in that best practice, or in that case of a great failure, for instance. So yes, I believe that those conversations that can be created, but also the very process of putting in words my thoughts, being able to convey and to translate those thoughts and ideas into an argument, and to explain to the others, to hear what the others could say about that and reach, and perhaps, well, I didn't realize about that, but now that we are seeing, perhaps that's something that's very beautiful to see in a multicultural context, because you can see precisely different approaches, different ideas, many times super out of the box. I mean, how it can provoke ideas, how ideas can enrich reality, and how in some way those conversations create an amazing platform for real dialogue, for real discussion and conversation in a very tolerant and open context. So that's something that is becoming the new normality, to have precisely those multicultural and multi-ethnical contexts. I think that is something that we could very, very bravely take advantage of, because reality looks like this and future looks like this. So this is how now the world is designed.
I want to go off script just a bit, and I only have a couple more minutes before I want to start taking questions from the audience. But there was one question that Mohammed gave that I want to sort of tie back to answers that you all could give. But Aurora, what you've said is that case studies sort of build community, and it gets people to engage in the dialogue and think critically. And Mohammed has asked us, how do we actually do this? And so I want some very specific guidance on how do you get students to think critically? How do you get them to move towards decisions? How do you actually, some mechanics of moving the conversation along to, like Rob said, from going like this to getting them to the place that they want to do? Any best practices that you can throw out I don't even mind who goes first. Sebastius.
Why did you pick me? I was thinking about the question. Mohammed's question is very important and interesting, as well as Aurora's point. So I think a lot depends on the way you do the teaching note. Because I think this needs to be in your mind when you are developing the teaching note, the type of discussion you'd like to have and how long and on what topic. But I think also, I was about to say that sometime later, but things like role plays, I think really spark off that energy in the classroom, because you simply cannot imitate or copy role play. So role plays really force people to put themselves in one of the actors' shoes and then use case data. But it creates tremendous amount of energy and interest, which sort of, I think, what Aurora was referring to.
Yeah, I love that. You know, one of the case studies that I use Monsanto, which is Rob's case study, where I put it was Monsanto selling seeds in India. And you split the students into farmers, into the government, into Monsanto, and when they in the big room, it's amazing the amount of energy that generates. Rob, do you have any pointers? Really pragmatic pointers.
So sometimes I will start with simply a vote to see where students land at the beginning. Usually cases 2, maybe 3 options. You see where they land, but that forces students to often take a fairly strong position initially. But as the discussion unfolds over the next few minutes, the intent is really to move them to more common ground. And so it is about, hearing both sides of whatever position or option you're considering, but then moving the students to think, well, how can you sort of work towards some commonality? I don't use those words to the students, but in terms of the decision, are you thinking about those criticisms? Are you thinking about the concerns and the pros and cons of each side? And so it is a matter of getting more opinions in the room, and often going to maybe some of the quieter students to hear or encourage them to share their particular perspective as well. Of course, sometimes you have bios on the students before you get to class, and so you can use that strategically. But regardless of whether you know a lot about the audience or not, it's about sort of being sensitive and picking up the signaling that you're seeing from students, but really encouraging them to do the talking, not me, which is kind of what we're doing now in the panel.
Quiet students to talk, Rob?
Yeah. Sorry?
How do you encourage quiet students?
Sometimes I will give them a very soft question in the sense of, there's no right or wrong answer. It's really just to get them talking, but really kind of reaching out to them either sometimes before class and say, I haven't heard from you too much lately. I'm sure you have something to add to this particular case or at this particular point in time, and so on. So it does depend a little bit on how much you know the audience and the students and the learners that you're working with.
And they just need that little bit of nudge and legitimacy in their voice.
Absolutely. Yeah. And often they do want to speak, but, for a variety of reasons, they're just, hesitant to speak up in a large group. And so just the encouragement, I think, does that.
Aurora, any pragmatic pointers?
Precisely the symbiosis that you mentioned between, for instance, a case and a role-playing game, because you are just giving them agency and provoking in them making precisely the experience something meaningful from them. And also, yes, those you mentioned, Rob, the soft calls, sometimes also cold calls about trying to catch their attention and to some way. But yes, I believe that probably, apart from other super specific and very pragmatic, as you say, ideas also, the important process of choosing the case, because sometimes, there are plenty of cases. So our previous work precisely on the briefing, which case would be much more relevant for them. I use cases that could be some way, of course, relevant because could be from the very country or some for countries that perhaps very closely physically or geographically, but that some way could reflect a similar case. So, for instance, a case that I like a lot is the one about the MIS holding from Sri Lanka, because he's some way very connected to something that is happening in Uzbekistan with the textile sector, but also the one from Huawei, also from Ivey, or the Monsanto from India. So cases that some way, even when they could be from different countries, but that reflect a reality that could be very recognizable for the students, and something that call really their attention, and that can motivate them along, because this is something about that. Yes, I mean, all these cases call their really yes, it's a very good way to engage their curiosity, I believe, because it's about reality. So yes.
Yeah, I'm really intrigued by the fact that we have so many, like you say, it's thousands of cases from which to choose, and how do you choose them? Even in sustainability, we're into the many hundreds. And so, yeah, that's a really tough problem, right, to figure it out. But I'm going to go to the questions Q&A, and I find the questions, first of all, are fabulous, and I wish we could cover them all, but we can't in the time that we have. But I'm going to go to one, and now I don't even remember who wrote it, but the trends in case study. Here we are, Maria. Spanish names are so hard for me. So Maria says, what are some of the big trends that you're seeing in the case method? How would you respond to the criticism? The case method is still very focused on the heroic protagonist versus stakeholder perspective. And do you have a favorite case study to teach systems thinking? Ooh, that speaks to my heart. So trends. First of all, trends. One trend each. So Rob, you go first this time.
All right, I would have to say a trend is towards shorter cases. We are seeing much more interest in cases that are half dozen pages versus 10 pages, and that's when I say interest is from the students. They are just used to sound bites now, and I think as case writers, it's challenging to write short cases. The reason we write long cases because we don't have time to write short cases. So trying to sort of think about how to condense, how to synthesize, how to distill the key ideas and create tension in that short synthesis is tough. But great cases are getting shorter.
I love it. A nice and short answer too, Rob. What do you think? A trend?
Well, many things could be said, but perhaps you're right. I mean, it's not easy to choose with the huge amount of cases that we, but yes, perhaps making them shorter, as Robert just mentioned, and also to perhaps to call the students' attention precisely with the power of a good storytelling, because many times, I mean, I can see many different approaches and many different trends precisely in the way you write a case or the way you use it. But I believe that yes, putting a good effort precisely on choosing a case that could have a storytelling that really call their style, their interest, and etc. can be really engaging, or I mean, it can precisely make the difference. Yeah.
I love the notion that storytelling is becoming really important. So, Sebastius, one trend?
I think one trend that's not changing is the students coming to the class without reading the case.
We all experience that.
And one trend that is emerging is ChatGPT. So, before this webinar, I just picked up a random case and asked ChatGPT what happened. And the answer it gave me is around 60-70% correct. So the answer doesn't get into the details, but it uses all the right words, collaboration, resistance to change, etc., etc. And then I kept on, modifying that, asking questions. But every time it came out with the answer where a student would be getting, in my class, around 60 to 70% if she writes that. So I think we need to be very cognizant of this in terms of the way we give assignments and the way we teach, because I guess even in the classroom, even if it's a short case and if you allow electronic gadgets in the classroom, then a student will be able to give a very smart answer in 30 seconds without even reading the case. So that's a trend we need to discuss more on. What I do is to then get into role plays, debates, some of the things that Rob talked about, where it's very difficult to chat GPT that answer because you have to answer on the go. But other than that, what Rob and Aurora said, of course, shorter cases. I think that's what comes to me.
Can I add one thing, sir? I think the other thing that I'd like to add, which is actually partly reflecting what Sylvester said earlier, is the multiple stakeholder perspective as well. I think more cases actually do a better job of capturing the perspectives of multiple groups, multiple individuals than maybe historically we've done it. We've been kind of management centric or maybe just customer centric in much of our case writing. And I'm overgeneralizing. I recognize that. So, of course, there's lots of variation. But I think we're seeing more recognition of multiple perspectives in cases now.
Yeah, I certainly think that there's a lot more multi-stakeholder cases as well. So I think that brings in those various voices. And even if you have a single perspective on a case study, you can invite students to offer different perspectives. Sebastius, do you allow technology in your classrooms?
No, I have tried both. So sometimes what I do is actually ask the student to use ChatGPT to write the answer, and then ask students to critique that, other groups to critique it. So with data. And then, of course, it becomes very interesting because one thing I've seen, if you allow them to use, they don't want to use it. They will just do a first level search and give you the answer. So, but I have also tried first 45 minutes, no gadgets. We have a discussion and then you can do a internet-based answer, but then open it up and, groups evaluate that answer. So I have tried all the three, and I think a combination, we need to experiment with combinations, but this idea of completely not having them sometimes is not practically possible. And I think there is a gadget anxiety that comes in them, not having anything to hold on or scroll or move their finger on. So it's a complex task.
I remember the days of pen.
I think the muscle memory sort of comes in.
I skipped over an interesting question, I think, to many is, why don't you just list one or two, maybe even three of your favorite cases? Rob, you talked about the flash food case study. What other ones, Rob, really are top of mind for sustainability that you love, and probably supply chains?
Well, another one I have not written was Mike Toffel at Harvard wrote on Allbirds. I thought is a fantastic case, partly because it gets into multiple aspects of moving to carbon neutrality and really unpacks the roles of different stakeholders, both in the supply chain, but in the broader universe of companies that impact what they did. So there's lots of great cases, but those are just two that come to mind.
What about you, Aurora?
Well, perhaps a part of, I mentioned a couple of them, but also a case that I like a lot. I mean, the previous ones were these ones at the MIS holding any case, and also the Huawei, and also a case that is amazing from perspective is the Union case, which is, well, it's from Spain, but I use it a couple of times with some adaptation, which is about
just Aurora, you said Huawei, and then
Huawei.
yeah,
And the very first one, it was MAS, the mass holding from Sri Lanka, which is probably some of you know it, and the Huawei and the Monsanto case from India, yeah. And the last one is Illunion. Illunion is a Spanish company, which is the number one precisely in inclusion and diversity. It's an amazing case. Illunion, yeah.
okay, wonderful. And what about you, Sebastius? Top of
So
mind.
I generally read the teaching note first to select the case, a note that allows me flexibility to customize inside the classroom to save my face. I would pick that case, which has got like 80-minute as well as a 60-minute. So because all classes are not same in terms of their ability to discuss and engage. But a case that comes to my mind is an old case, Herman Miller, but excellent case on switching of materials. I think I have not found a similar case. It's I think 2009 or 10. And another case was Unilever sustainability strategy. I think it was I forget the no, I'm forgetting the author's name, but excellent to understand the strategic choices one needs to make, and also bringing in the external stakeholders there, the company negotiating with the government and the other groups. So it's a little long to my liking, but it catches or covers the complexity so well that I try to still use it.
It is an excellent case, yes.
Yeah. Who's the author, Rob? You remember?
I would just be guessing. Sorry. I can't quite recall.
Yeah, I also don't remember, but
It's a Harvard case, right? The Unilever case.
Yeah, it is.
And I love the fact you're consistent, Sebastius, in that you said Unilever and Herman Miller, and both of those are big companies, and you say this shows you that big companies care about these issues as well. But also how difficult it is. I would love to continue this conversation, and I love the questions that were being asked too, and yet there's no way that we can tackle all of that within such a short webinar. And we only have a couple more minutes. So I'm going to go around the room one last time and just ask if there's any closing comments that you want to make so that we finish at the top of the hour. So Aurora, do you want to start with any closing comments?
Well, thank you, of course, not only to Ivey, but also to you, Tima, and the rest of panelists. And also for all the participants, if you didn't try already, try with cases. Be brave, because the result is always much wider than you will expect, and that sometimes you can even measure, but it will completely transform, I believe, the experience at class. Yes, thank you.
Rob?
Thank you as well for the invitation to be part of the panel. I think one suggestion I might have, which might be a bit controversial, I suppose, in a sense. We talked a lot about teaching sustainability cases, and I would encourage members of those who are listening to also think about writing cases. It actually, I learned a lot about teaching cases by actually trying to write a few cases. It doesn't mean I always do it well, but in terms of working through that process and trying to understand, well, what would I want as an instructor, actually makes me think from the other side when I'm teaching a case, here's how I can lay out a roadmap for the students on their learning journey. So you don't have to make it a big part of your portfolio of scholarly activities, but I think it's important to engage at multiple levels when we're thinking about case teaching.
On that too, I want to honor the folks who did ask questions about case writing, and we didn't spend any time on it. So, Rob, I really appreciate that last comment. And I do want to say that one of the exciting parts, Sebastius, before we come to you, is that this panel was all motivated by a new award that Ivey Publishing is giving for case writing. And so please look on the Ivey Publishing website for more information on that award. And it's being co-sponsored by Prime. And so this is our opportunity to celebrate all those great case writers, Rob. Sebastius, over to you.
No, I think I would like to really congratulate Ivy and PRME for doing this, because this is the right time to talk about this topic. And I think if there are teachers in the audience, do try case teaching. You will never forget the experience of teaching a case. I mean, you'll remember most of the sessions you have done. And we learn so much from this teaching. With cases, that's the other thing. It's not just about the content, but also the approach and the reception. It's an experience you need to have to understand, and in some way it's addictive.
It's just addictive. You're absolutely right. A good addiction. Rob, Sebastius, thank you so much for your time and for sharing your insights. Ivey Publishing, thank you. Prime, thank you. This has been really a joy, and hopefully it will be just the start of many more webinars on how we can all be better teachers of sustainability. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Yeah.
Bye, everybody.
Bye bye. Thank you.